welcome to the first Michigan High School Lacrosse Coaches Association Town Hall, featuring Bill Tierney, head coach at Denver, Kevin Corrigan, head coach at Notre Dame. Kevin joined us last night with a number of coaches online through Zoom to talk about what it's like to get ready for the upcoming season. Notre Dame had just played Air Force this past Saturday. Kevin gave us a number of insights to his team, getting ready for the season, and just kind of what goes on in South Bend. Bill Tierney was supposed to join us last night. Well, there were some family issues, but Bill joined me this morning to talk about the same subjects. And Bill gives us some insight about getting ready for Johns Hopkins this coming Saturday to get his team ready before they open the season against Utah. And both conversations, I think, will be quite enlightening. And getting ready for the season is something that's pretty important. We also wanted to mention the National Interscholastic Lacrosse Coaches Association. Membership in that organization is something that you guys can take a look at, and the logo is up here, and the information will be online at the end of the conversation. Also, please pay attention. And next week we have a second town hall on Sunday night at 8 o'clock on Zoom, and you can check that out through the Michigan High School Lacrosse Coaches Association website. And next week we pick up with John Torpy from High Point and Lars Tiffany, the defending NCAA champion coach from Virginia. So I think those will be both really good guys to get some information. I think you'll be surprised when you listen to both coaches. This is more of a conversation than it was a presentation, sort of a give and take conversation, if you will. And I think we learned a lot. So let's get on with the message and see if we can't learn something. So first up is Kevin, and we'll bring behind that Bill Tierney, who we got a chance to talk to Monday morning. So thanks for being aboard.
Guys, first of all, welcome and thank you for coming. The coaches have been nice enough to pass on their stipends to Oxford High School lacrosse program. I coached there for 10 years. We all know the kids are going back to school tomorrow and the tragedy that happened a few months ago. So, Kevin, first of all, I want to just thank you publicly for being a part of that discussion. It's terrific, and I really want to thank you for that. This is a Zoom call for the Michigan High School Lacrosse Coaches Association. We want to talk about prepping to get ready for the season. Now, you had Air Force in on Saturday. You had your clinic. And
we
so
did.
Kind of Kevin, take us back to, you come back from Christmas and you've done some work in the fall. Kind of where are you with stuff? What goes through your mind? And is it easier in the 34th year at Notre Dame than it was in the beginning?
Well, yeah, of course it's easier. Yeah, you've got a familiarity with everything that you're trying to do, but at the same time, you can't skip any steps in preparing for any season or preparing any team for a season. So, there's certain parts of it you just have to go through. And it's funny because I this is going to sound funny to you. I just got a call earlier today from my 92-year-old mother who said, how'd it go? What do you think? And I'm like, well, we until you're out there on the field, you just never know, I mean, and my mom grew up, my dad coach when they got married and she's grown up around it, and she's like, yeah, I mean, until the lights come on, you never know what's going to happen. Right. And so, that's the truth. That's what it's like every year. So you have the same anxieties and the same uncertainties and everything, but at the same time, the same excitement about getting going and everything. And so, yeah, off we go.
Talk a little bit about Saturday, and I want to get into specifics of the planning aspects. Are you happy at this point with what you've done with where the kids are at after Air Force was in town?
Yeah, so we have an interesting preseason. We had 6 weeks from the time the guys came back to school until we actually have our first game. So the first week we concentrated on lifting and touches, just letting the guys handle the ball a lot. Didn't do anything live. So we've really only had 5 days of full practice going into the scrimmage this weekend. So from that standpoint, we were a little bit limited, but at the same time felt really good about what our guys did. I mean, we always say to them, like, we didn't prepare. We're not preparing for Air Force. We're preparing for Detroit on the 19th of March. And so this is another step, another day. But we're going to be able to get things out of this day that we can't get out of a normal practice day, because we're going against somebody else, because we're all playing together. We're all on the same side, and for one of the only 2 days of the 5 weeks of preseason. And so, that becomes a really important thing. And certainly to the kids, a chance to play with the same color on and all be rowing in the same direction. A great thing. So, yeah, good start though.
We have a bunch of coaches who are brand new. We have a bunch of coaches who do different kinds of things. When fall ball ends for you, I'm assuming your coaching staff sits down and you basically put it up on a dry board of some sort or some kind of schematic to figure out some stuff. Kind of walk us through the end of fall ball into the holiday. And then when you start that first day, kind of go through the mechanical part of what you guys talk about and how you kind of go through it.
Well, at the end of fall, one of the things we do, and we do it periodically through fall ball, we go for about 6 weeks into fall. So after week 2, after week 4, and then at the end, we sit down and we literally go position by position and rank our guys, right? To make sure that we're having those conversations about each guy, to make sure that we know, that we have some consensus, or if not, why we don't, what we're missing or what somebody's missing. So we try to work through the personnel part of it. Then once we kind of come to an agreement on where we feel about that and who we feel like the guys are, then it's like, all right, well, what is this group that we're identifying as our top 30 right now? What are they going to be best at? That's what we should build around, not the great ideas that we have in our heads, but right. What do these guys do well? And then let's look at that and say, how can we incorporate that into what we do, or what's the best way to do that? So that's kind of the process of working from personnel to schemes and tactics and then we kind of do the same thing again in the first 3 weeks of preseason. Because again, like, guys make big strides in that, a lot of it's funny. We have a kid back this year who's a 5th year senior, took last year off with COVID, just decided that he wanted to step away. He actually coached a high school team. He did some things. He's back. He's a different player, and he's a different player without having any new particular skills or abilities that he didn't have before, but with a maturity, with a poise, with a perspective that he didn't have before. And so he's a different player. Well, multiply that times all your freshmen who've now been through a fall, they come back different in the spring. Multiply that times all your sophomores who've been through a full year of everything, and then a fall, and then they say, okay, I think I know where I fit now, or where I can make my move. So we try not to lock too much in until about a couple of weeks before our first game. We try to stay as nimble as we can while still acknowledging, like, hey, Pat Cavanaugh's going to start for us. Like, we're not,
right.
Liam Intiman's going to be our goalie. We're not going to make up stuff. We're not going to be silly about it. But at the same time, there's a lot of roles and a lot of again, emphasis that can be changed by what guys do in the course of a year, or even in the course of a fall. So yeah, we're working at all that stuff, Greg. I really think that's one of the things I'm constantly asking our coaches. Who are we missing right now? Right. And I ask my captains that sometimes. Who are we missing? Somebody out there that you think we're not seeing, that we're not appreciating, something that you guys see that we don't see, just to know that you're giving every guy every opportunity, but also that you're giving your team every opportunity to be the best you can be.
Kevin, how many did you dress for practice right now?
Wow, 56.
Okay, so
biggest roster we've ever had, Greg. The whole COVID thing and all that is just got our roster's blown up. Okay,
so if the first 30 are reasonably scripted into something, how does number 57, number 49, how does it get your attention in a practice when that first 3 weeks, even though you're talking about being somewhat flexible, you still got to get ready for the season? How does a kid get – so, but I'm saying that from the standpoint is you're a brand new coach, you're a high school guy, you're trying to figure out that concept. What's your thoughts?
I constantly say to our guys that your job is to do something well enough that we have to say, I need to find a way to get that guy on the field, or he's doing this thing better than anybody else. How do we take advantage of the fact that he does things so well? So yeah, at the end of the day, I think guys get caught in the roster of your team sometimes much that they're always looking at the guy in front of them saying, I can beat out that. Saying, you don't have to beat out that guy. What you have to do is do something well enough that we want to play the role that you're doing well. That makes sense.
No, that makes sense. My question, is it easier now in the sense of you had a pretty consistent coaching staff with Jerry and with Brian, and your coaching staff over the last few years it's just different. You got guys coming in and guys coming out. Is that part of that cultural chemistry that you work on when you get new guys, or is that they just got to kind of fit in?
It's not something I'm great at. I'll be honest with you. Listen, I had Kevin Anderson coach with us for at least 10 full-time years. Jerry coached with us for 3 years and then came back for another 12-year stint. So it's not like we've been running a revolving door of people through here. And at the end of the day, and even our staff the last 3 years hasn't changed, except for the volunteer. So yeah, I'm not great at that. I mean, honestly, maybe it's a good thing because I didn't have a ton of experience at it. I tend to think that I've got smart guys and they'll figure it out. But I probably don't communicate in that situation as well as I should. And if I had a lot of turnover, that's the one thing I would advise anybody is over communicate, don't under communicate. I'm probably guilty of under communicating, but again, we tend to hold on to guys for a while.
You're standing in front of a bunch of high school coaches, which you are on Zoom here. What would be some advice you'd give them for pre-planning for the season and sort of get ready and have some ideas, maybe some things that they're not aware of that maybe you guys do?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, the one thing I would say is you can't skip any steps. I don't care if you have an old team, a young team, an experienced team, an inexperienced team, a super talented team or a less talented team. You can't skip any of the steps that you have to have in terms of preparing players for a season, preparing and developing players for a career, and preparing a team for a season, right? So those things all need to be done, and they need to be kind of intentionally done on an everyday basis. And if you do that, then there's room to move around. There's flexibility that can be had. I'm a North Star guy. Don't lose sight of the big stuff of what you're trying to do, right? Don't keep that out there, but don't think that there's like a direct roadmap to how to get there. There's not. That's the part of coaching that is art, not science, right? The science is make sure you've got a list of every situation that you want to have covered by the time you play a first game, right? Do you have your man down clear in? Do you have, do you have the little things that need to be done, your face off, with a minute to go in the game and you're up 3 or down 3, what are you going to do? How are you going to execute that? Those are things you want to have a list, right? That's the science of, you got to have all these situations that you think are going to be critical and playing a game done by that first game, right? So you map that out and you do that. But don't think that there's a roadmap that's going to take your team from where you're starting to where you're ending. That is the part you have to follow. That's the art of it. That's the understanding your group, understanding the motivation, understanding the leadership, understanding the particular skills or even if the skill is just that we've got a really disciplined group. They're not that talented, but they're super disciplined. Well, that's an advantage you can use. And so you don't want to coach that team the same way as you coach a super talented, undisciplined, right? Those are two different groups. So so I think it is time some part to start.
No, I get that. Is every practice for you scripted?
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, every practice is scripted, but every practice is not scripted a week ahead of time.
Okay.
I do a practice plan every day, and usually afternoon every day. Because I want to know everything that I need to know. I want to have watched the previous day's practice. I want to have talked with our coaches. I want to know from my trainer who's hurt or limited or who's not going to be there or whatever. And I want to have the chance to think about what do we really need to get accomplished today. And before I make a practice plan. So yeah, I don't have a 10 days out, I don't have my practice plan scripted, but every by the time we go to practice, every plan is scripted to the minute.
How often in a scripted practice do you come off of that because you see something you just want to, the flexibility is that most of the time, some of the time, part of the time?
I would say some of the time. I wouldn't say it's most of the time, because most of the time you got things you need to get done, and all those things are something that you've evaluated and feel like you need to get done. But some of the time you're doing something and you're like, we don't understand this, and I can't leave this right now until we have a better understanding of what we're doing. So I'm going to change that. It's funny, Greg. A couple of years ago, our captains came to me and they're like, Coach, like we gotta, like, because we were struggling with the middle of the field. We're struggling with our riding and clearing game, right? And so we kept, we actually run a clock, right? We run our scoreboard clock that says, Nick, we're going to do, whatever for 15 minutes. We're going to do, riding and clearing for 15 minutes, and it goes up on the clock. So whenever the guys look up, the clock's changing. As soon as we finish one thing, we're on to the next, and the clock reflects. Our manager has the clock, and they have the practice plan, and they, 15 minutes for riding and clearing. And the guys were like, Coach, like we keep going over every day. And I'm like, guys, we're not going over. We finish 2 hours on the dot every single day. They're like, last week we must have done riding and clearing for 25 minutes. I said, yeah, we did. But we didn't do something else that was part of the practice plan. I said, if you want me to share the practice plan, I'll hang it in the locker room. But I said, we're not going over. We're just adjusting the priorities within practice sometimes because there's something that important that we don't want to leave it without finishing it, or getting a correct understanding of it at the very least. And it was just kind of funny because they were like, God, because their assumption was 10 more minutes of that, meant we were going over 10 minutes every time we did that. And it was like, no, we're not. We're really, it still ends at 6 p.m.
Are you the kind that wants to see a drill done right? If your team, especially early season, if they're not getting it and you've got 12 minutes to that drill, a lot of guys will, they'll do the drill for 45 minutes until they get it right. Other guys will leave it and come back to it because they're not getting it. And just, where do you fall with that one?
You have to be really careful about that. I think a sense of urgency in practice is a really significant and important thing. And when you have 12 minutes for something, you have 12 minutes. I say to our guys all the time, like, we have to get this. We have to do these things in the time that we have to do them because, it's like a game. They don't, if you're down 2 when the clock runs out, you don't get to say, hey, give me 3 more minutes on the clock. We want to get this right. Like you have to have an urgency about getting this right. And so everybody has to kind of be intentional about that. So no, I'm not one. We don't do that a lot. Like I say, some of the time, something that's really significant, you don't want to leave it. You need a few extra minutes, but generally we stick to the plan because the plan gives an appropriate amount of time to things that are important. But at the same time, you have to keep moving on to that next thing because they're all important, or they wouldn't be part of the plan.
Are you less animated in practice and games, or do things bother you more in practice than they do in games? Mistakes.
Oh, I'm much more animated probably in practice, but it's funny because people, let's just say media as much as anybody, but even in general, people watching a game, they don't understand when you're emotional, when you're not. Your players do. Your players know that you get upset about certain things. You don't get upset about other things, right? Like, it's funny, Greg, I go back with a lot of things that I think I know or learn about coaching. And I go back to my dad and quite honestly, the way he parented, and him and my mom. Right. And, in my household, if you like wrecked the family car or did something like that, like that was something you were going to be held accountable for. It wasn't something everybody was going to get crazy about, as long as nobody was hurt. If you spoke back to my mom, you were going to get the belt, right? Because disrespect was not going to be tolerated. That's a lesson that you needed to learn, that disrespect was not going to be tolerated. Stupidity could be outgrown, but disrespect may not be outgrown. And so you had to learn that disrespect was not going to be tolerated, right? And so I feel the same way about a lot of things in coaching. Like, there are all the time things and there's sometime things. The all the time things you get upset about, because there can't be a huge tolerance for all the time things, or else they're not all the time things. But decision making is not an all the time thing. Guys are going to make bad decisions. They just are. It's part of the game. It's part of the nature of the game. It's part of athletics, especially in a game that's as fluid and fast moving as lacrosse is. Guys are going to make bad decisions.
Yeah. You
can minimize them by sound fundamentals. You can minimize those by good communication. You can minimize those by kind of fundamental athleticism and things, but you can't ever eliminate them, because you're talking about human beings make decisions. They're gonna make some bad ones. So you don't get upset about the decisions. You get upset about the lack of communication. You get upset about the lack of fundamentals, because those things you can control in every situation. And so if we control those, the other things will come along. So your players know what kind of mistakes are more egregious and what kind of mistakes are more tolerated, if that makes sense.
I want to just briefly talk a little bit about exercise and how it relates to being in shape for lacrosse. I watch high school teams come out and I see them circle the field 6 times, and that's great if you're running in a cross country team. And my question to you is, I'm a big fat guy, even when I was in college, and I get in different shape than a guy who's, thin and different lung capacity. There's been all kind of empirical evidence that everybody gets in shape in a different way. Do you follow the prescribe to that? And do you allow your players to get into game shape on their level? Or, how do you go about knowing if a guy's in shape, and how does that work for you?
The biggest thing is, honestly, we do very little actual conditioning. We try to run practice at a tempo that creates game-like conditioning. We try to make sure that the drills that we have on any given day, or the 6-on-6 or whatever we're doing, is in some way reflecting what playing the game looks like. Even our line drill, we don't do line drills. We do passing drills that reflect the kinds of passes that guys have to make according to the position they play and the movements that they have to make and everything else, right? So all of that comes down to a 2-hour workout every single day that's very reflective of what a 2-hour game looks like. And if we do that for, call it 6 weeks, but even call it 4 weeks going into preseason, and we're doing our strength and conditioning workouts with our weight trainer, in the weight room, and we know what we've built up to that with, in the weight room and all that, that's all it is. So we're not, you'll rarely see us run sprints or do anything like that, because we think the best way to condition to play the game is to play the game.
I have a couple young coaches on our staff, and I almost going back to Vince Lombardi, Bobby Knight days, and I grew up in those days. And I don't coach that way. And that's the reason I'm asking the question is that sometimes it gets to be redundant and corporate punishment almost is to that extent. And it just doesn't seem to me to have any effectiveness with young kids.
Yeah. And listen, you don't ever want to do something as punishment that is part of the game, right? I mean, that's not, so besides the philosophical part of how you handle punishment and stuff like that, I don't know so much that I believe in punishment as much as I believe in accountability. And so you're holding people accountable to certain things. And the best way to do that is if they're not able to do the things that you're doing, they have to be accountable to not being able to do that. And they have to get themselves in better shape, or you have to work with them to get them in better shape. Punishing them for not being there, that doesn't make any sense. That's, or punishing a team for playing poorly by running is not a thing. Right. But at the same time, listen, every now and then I'm not gonna lie to you. I've thrown my team out of practice, or I've said, get on the line. If we're not going to get anything else done, we're going to get the conditioning that we needed to get done today. We're going to get that done in the next 10 minutes, and then we're going to go home, because I'm not going to sit here and watch us play this kind of lacrosse with with bad intensity, bad effort, and not really applying ourselves to it. Let's get our conditioning done that we had to get done today, and let's get out of here, because you guys aren't doing the rest of it. So, I don't know that that's punishment, but it was never meant to be. It was meant to be like pragmatic.
If you talk to a lot of high school coaches, kids really don't want to practice anymore. They don't want to have those days where they come down and work on shots. And if they don't play every weekend in some travel program, so fundamentals get to be sort of, shot out the door. Do you revert back to fundamentals as the key to almost everything?
Yes. Yeah. There's really just not a lot that's more important. And again, like I said, if your decision making is not good, then either you need to go back and talk to your guys about, the decisions they're making and how they're making them and all that, and get a better understanding. But most of the time, you'll find out that the reason the decision making is bad is because the guy is out of position to make the decision, or he's not fundamentally, athletically prepared to make the decision, or he's not getting the communication that he needs to have all the information to make a good decision in that situation. And those are the things you need to work on, not the ultimate decision, but the pieces that go into to consistently making good decisions.
This summer, I had a chance to hang out with the PLL guys. I got hired to do some of the stuff because of the talk show, the YouTube show we're doing. They were using some of our interviews, but what was mind-boggling to me was how fundamental the guys at the highest level are. I saw Jim Stignata come up with rings for ground balls, PVC, 2 inches, turn the stick around and do some things. And when he was doing the drill for the first time, guys were laughing and they couldn't complete the drill. And then by the time they got through it, you could watch the improvement. So how much do you go back to maybe something even 20 years ago that changes from what you do in your practices? Because the world really is round if you understand that premise.
Yeah, I mean, listen, definitely there, like I say, you can't skip steps, I mean, that's just the reality of it. You can't skip steps, and the fundamental steps are the foundation of everything that you do. And sometimes you're working so hard on things, a level or two above that you lose that, or that your players lose that thread to the fundamental, and you have to reestablish that. So yeah, there's never a time where you get away from those things. If your team is good at them and they're doing them consistently well, great. You can move on to other stuff.
Yeah. The old story is you can't build a spaceship if you can't run. It's a pretty simple process. Kevin, when you go out and recruit, do you have, is it high school coaches or that's a loaded question. I'm not going to ask it. That's not a fair question. What could young coaches emulate from you guys in terms of, I see high school coaches talking about really complex offenses and really complex defenses. And I've listened to Jerry Byrne explain defense in literally 6 minutes, don't get beat twice. as an example, or John Danowski saying, beat your man, score a goal. If you don't beat your man, pass the ball. Is it as hard as we make it? And here's the other part of that is I listen to all of these podcasts, and it seems like everybody's got a scientific evidence and understanding of how lacrosse is played. And it just seems to get a little crazy.
That's it's funny because sometimes you just overthink some of these things, and we have a thing we say to our guys all the time. It's simple. Simple doesn't mean easy. It just means it's not that complicated. That doesn't make it easy. And I think that's true for a lot of stuff that we as coaches think about. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't overthink it. Just make sure that you're touching all the bases. Again, it's all about. It's not about what you know. It's about what your players know and what they can use in making themselves and the team better. And so that's what guys need to stay focused on. Like, am I providing my guys clarity to make great decisions, or am I confusing them with too much complication and all of that? And if I am, then go back to the simple stuff.
Let me grab a couple questions. There was a question here from Matt Coverdale. Do you have a fitness test or requirement for the beginning of the season, miles, times, any of those kinds of things?
I don't, but I also have the advantage of having fall ball and then having 8 weeks where my strength coach is working with our guys. And then, having great leadership with a group that's concentrated. High school guys, you may not see your guy until the first day of practice because he may have played football and basketball, so he's fit in a general sense, but not lacrosse fit. Another guy, you may not see because he's, working on the family farm or whatever. You don't know what he's doing, but that he shows up at the first day of practice. And then other guys, they're playing summer ball and club ball and fall ball and box in the winter, and you see them all the time. So, you kind of got to have something that accommodates for all of that in a high school situation. And in my situation, we have all that group together from September 1 until, May, whatever, so that's a little bit different than I think most high school guys' situation is.
Do you worry about shuttles and squats and wall ball tests and all those kind of things, or is it for you more an eye test on an athlete?
I think all those things are good, but again, for me, it depends on what you're talking about, Gray. If you're talking about it in a recruiting situation, those things are instructive. If you're talking about with my team, I see them every day and I see how they work and I see who works hard and who doesn't. And those things kind of guide me much more than anything I see from some kind of a test at the end.
Many high school teams have kids with great IQ that are not athletic and great athletes that aren't very smart on the field. You've got to kind of mix and match when you're recruiting. And I think I've asked you this question before. Are you looking for athleticism? Or are you looking for IQ? And I know
yes.
That probably breaks. Yeah, no, I understand the answer is yes. But of those two, I guess it depends on the position. Is that a fair statement?
No, I think it depends on the player, and it depends on what level of each that they bring. You'll take a chance on a phenomenal athlete, but a really good athlete that is not that smart. It doesn't matter how fast you're moving if you're going in the wrong direction. So you got to have a guy who's got some of both, and a great, really smart player who's skilled is going to be really good in some situations. But if he's a bad athlete, he's also going to be bad in some situations. And so you can find a way for that guy. That's one of the great things about lacrosse is that guy can find a role, but he may not be the guy you're building around. So yeah, it's just everybody's different, and I think you have to evaluate everybody that you're looking at and say, where do they fall on the spectrum of each of those things, right? The personal attributes of toughness and competitiveness and poise and confidence and all that, the the pure athleticism, the skill set of the stick and that with the game, and then the IQ and how well they see and understand the game and can make decisions within the game. And then there's the part that you learn when they show up, and that's how quickly do they learn? How quickly can they take something that they've learned and apply it to their game? And that often separates guys in the early part of their career. So all of those things are part of recruiting. All those things are part of evaluating your team from year to year.
I'm a slightly above average high school player, and I'm in my room and I'm listening to Coach Corrigan talk, and I can pretty much pass with one hand. I'm not so good on the opposite hand, which I'm basically describing 80% of high school kids. What would you tell that young man to do between now and the beginning of the season? What one thing can he do to improve?
Well, I mean, what do you control, right? That's what you can do. You can be as fit as you can possibly be. Control that. You don't control how fast you can run, but you control how long you can run at your fastest speed, right? Or maintain something close to that. That's just a conditioning thing, and you control that to a large extent. Your stick skills are something you control. Not everybody, there's the old 10,000 hour thing and all that stuff, whatever. If you spend 1,000 hours with the stick in your hand and I spend 1,000 hours with the stick in your hand, there's nothing that says you and I are both going to achieve at the same level.
Right.
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 But you control whether you spend 1,000, 500, 1,500, you control that. So if you want your skills to get to a certain extent, a certain point, you control whether you put in the hours to get to that or whether you don't.
I can look in a mirror. No,
what are controllables? That's the question I ask to guys in that situation.
You look in the mirror. I can look in the mirror. No, God did not create us all equal. So I get that. I get that premise, and it comes from that standpoint. Kevin, the sport, and I want to keep you maybe 3-4 more minutes. The sport of lacrosse is not growing. It's been pretty much stagnant in terms of numbers since about 17. We seem to be drifting into a hockey soccer model to some extent. And it goes back to the practice and our kids, the kids you're recruiting, yes, they're obviously fundamentally sound, but in a general sense, do you see an improvement, a status quo, a drop down in terms of basic skill, high school kids coming out?
Gosh, I don't know. That for me, that's a big part of who we get, how good a job we do recruiting.
Right.
I guess I think, I feel pretty strongly that the game has never been played at a better level than it is right now. And that's top to bottom. So yeah, I want to see the game continue to grow because I've seen the game continue to improve since I started playing and started watching 60 years ago.
What excites you about lacrosse at the moment?
Probably just the passion, that people have for the game. It's not, it's a very authentic thing. It's not something people are faking. They love our game. Kids love to play it. Coaches love to coach it. We've got more good coaches in the game of lacrosse right now. It's not even close to where it was, 20 years ago. And so, yeah, that excites me because it just keeps getting better.
And last question, 34 years, I believe, in South Bend as head coach.
Yes, sir. This will be the 34th season. 34
years ago, would you have thought it'd still be in South Bend?
Oh God, no, I would never have thought that. I always joke with my wife. We got married after my first year out here, and she said, "You got 3 years to win some games and get us out of here." And then, at some point I was looking at a job and I said to her, "What do you think?" She said, "Well, we'll miss you if you go." So it was, I kind of knew where I stood. I've been really, really fortunate, Greg. I not only have I had a great job, but I had a job that continued to evolve. And if this job was the same job that I took 34 years ago, I wouldn't still be here. if this job was the same job that it was 20 years ago, I wouldn't still be here. The job has continued to evolve, and I've been lucky to be here when that happened. And so in a kind of a funny way, I've had the same job for 34 years, but I've probably had, in reality, 4 different jobs over the course of those 34 years, because the standards and the support and the resources and everything else continued to grow in a way that made it a different job. And I was able to do that at the same great university, which is a really fortunate thing.
Kevin, why are you better at coaching today than you were even 10 years ago? What do you think you've learned in the last 10 years?
You know what? I don't know if I could tell you exactly what I've learned, but I'll tell you this. I hope I'm better because I pay attention every day, and I really hope that I'm paying attention and getting better. I'd be disappointed in myself if I was, after all the years of doing what I do and all the great people that I've had a chance to be around, the great kids that challenge me to be a better coach, and the opportunities I've had to compete with great coaches and everything. Just like if I'm not improving, gosh, that'd be
it's a coaching thing, but I think it's almost over.
What'd you say, Kevin? Can you finish that?
I did. I don't know if I got lost.
Yeah. No, we're good there. I think somebody else jumped in. The reason I'm asking that question is, and I guess this is the last question. A friend of ours, Bill Wolford, passed here in the last few months.
Yes.
And when he used to come to your camps, Billy and I would room together, and we would sit up till 4 o'clock in the morning talking about, or going across to the hotel there where the restaurant is, and on a Monday or Tuesday night, and have those conversations. And I find what's interesting, Kevin, is that the same guys that win the high school level are the same guys that are, even the old guys are still having those conversations. So self-evaluation, I think, is important, even at your level. Is that a fair statement?
100%. I mean, just like I said, just staying aware, continuing to be aware of your surroundings, be aware of what's going on around you, and be willing to adjust. Don't think you've got all the answers, because you don't. And so yeah. And it's funny, Greg, I'm glad you brought that up. Billy's a great friend, came for, I don't know how many years. It had to be 20 years to our camp. And many a night at the Mhslca, after camp was over, talking about things and yeah, talking about things. It's funny. When I remember going to a coaches convention a few years ago, and somebody said, God, every year we talk about the same things. And I'm like, yeah, we do, because we do the same thing every year. We need to continue to evaluate that we're doing those things correctly, and that there's not a better way, or, what did we learn this year that is a better way? So, yeah, I hope we keep talking about, I hope we talk about some new things, but I hope we continue to talk about the same things every year too, because those are the things that we do.
Yeah. Kevin, I can't tell you how much I've appreciated this. We get off to a little slow start, but listen, thanks so much. We wish you the best this season in the league, and hopefully that final weekend we're watching you on TV from Memorial Day somewhere.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I apologize for the confusion.
Not a big deal.
I'm no technological genius, that's for sure. So glad we got this together, and it's good to spend a little time with you.
Thanks for your time, and we'll certainly see you along the trail. And I'd like to ask the other coaches, I appreciate them being on board. We'll smooth out next week, and I'll try to get Bill Tierney on with us next week with Lars Tiffany and John Torpy. So, Kevin, thanks for making this work, and this was kind of fun. So thank you.
You got it, Greg. Take care.
All right, man. We're talking with Coach Bill Tierney, the head coach at University of Denver. First of all, Bill, thanks for joining us in our town hall. We're catching you the next day. I know you were busy yesterday, but we wanted to talk a little bit about, sort of preparation for the season. You have a big scrimmage coming up, I think, on the 29th, this coming Saturday against Air Force.
Against Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins, your old school.
Yeah, one of them.
Yeah. Just as a veteran coach, and if you're talking to a bunch of younger coaches, and there's a variety of discussions within the topic, but how do you, when you come off of, the 1st of January, how do you come off getting ready for the season? What's what are some of the techniques and tactics that you use as a head coach to get ready for the kids come to school?
Well, first of all, Greg, we have a unique academic schedule here, which kind of puts us in a little bit of a, I wouldn't say difficult situation, but one that's a little different from what everybody else goes through. We're a trimester school, so actually by Thanksgiving, our kids are done with their fall semester. That's
Okay.
the good news. The bad news is then we don't see them for 7 weeks. And then they come back on January, whatever, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever. This year it was the 3rd. And we jump right into classes. So with that in mind, preparing them, as you asked, becomes more of a real observation first. Physical observation, strength observation, trying to assess where they've been from a conditioning standpoint, where they've been from a stick work standpoint. We've got kids from Florida all the way up to northern Canada. So we got everybody all different spots. So we have to assess that first, and then throw into it, as I'm sure the other coaches have been telling you, COVID. And so first, our school's done an amazing job here. Every one of our students here gets tested once a week. Our athletes get tested twice a week. And then that's the good news, getting tested. The bad news is if it comes up, then they're on the quarantine. Going back from that now, we've gone to 5-day and contact tracing is a little less rigid from last year. But so all those things combined make us more hyper aware than I've ever been of making sure we're healthy. In the past, and normally what we would do is we would evaluate their conditioning through a run test, evaluate their strength through a couple of strength tests that our guys do, and then some stick work type things, just to kind of see where everybody's at and start from there. This year we had to be very, very careful. We didn't even give them a run test yet. Our strength protocol has been kind of on a slow decline. A slow upcline. And so it's been a little slower this year, but in the long run, it's just what we've learned is just that, at this time of the year, you can lose kids for a long, long time if you're not careful, even though you want them to have the same stick work that they had in October and have them be in the great shape they were in and have the weather be a little warmer like it was. But all that in mind, we take a little bit more of a cautious approach in early January.
There's a lot of empirical evidence that people get in shape in different times and places. I watch high school teams. And that's a question we talked about last night. You watch a high school team come out, they run around the field like they're a cross country team, another drill without a stick in their hands. And that never made sense to me. And our kids I have tall kids and short kids, and I'm sure you have the same. Not everybody gets in shape in the same way. And certainly game shape isn't practice shape. So how many kids do you dress for a practice, and how many are practically involved in the scheming for getting ready for that first scrimmage or first game?
That's a great question, Greg. And this year has been, we've been hit a little harder than most. We have last year with the whole 5th year thing, and we still have a little bit of that, but not like we did last year. Last year we had 68 guys on our team. We're down to 56 now, and we literally have 4 guys that are out for the year. So we are going to be at what we would consider a normal roster size, about 50 to 52. You have your ups and downs during the season, little nags and groin pulls and sprained ankles and stuff like that. And some freshman always gets mono, so you go through the ups and downs of it. I was looking this morning, and today we'll have 44 healthy, so that's a pretty good number for us at this point. And then as far as preparing them, Mhslca, who's our strength coach, has worked really well with me, and I've always, for one of the binding things that brings together 22 years of Princeton and 13 years of Denver is that every Monday for all those 35 years I've done a Monday mile. And every strength coach and every conditioning coach I've talked to tells me that that's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. As you said, it's got nothing to do with lacrosse. But what we find from that is that Mondays are days where the kids are just coming off the weekend. They've had a big game on Saturday. Usually Sunday's a rest day, and these are college kids. So Monday's not going to be first day back to class. Monday's not going to be their sharpest day. So at the end of Monday's practice, we do a Monday mile. They got to run a mile within 6 minutes. And it gives us kind of a mental, it's more mental than it is physical, even though physically it hurts for some of them. And we acknowledge exactly what you said. I mean, we have some kids running it in 5:15. We have others coming in at 6:30, so,
Right.
But for each one of those guys, no matter what it comes in, if they put their full effort into it, it's a mental battle. And so, but with that in mind, then our strength coach takes over. We now have real high technology and everything. We measure our kids every day. They wear these catapult units. We can tell their output. We can tell their effort. We can tell their heart rate. We can tell everything from it. So he can guide us into the conditioning we need to do. It might be, that we practice hard on Monday and then we have to go a little lesser on Tuesday and all those things that in the old days you used to think as a coach is, we had a great day, let's go easy on them tomorrow. Or we had a crummy day, let's kill them tomorrow. Now is on technology. And the funny part about it is it tells you the same stuff, but it's all pretty scientific. And then we work towards, now this will be our first, what we consider game week, even though it's just a scrimmage with Hopkins. It's a good way to prepare us for a game week, which will be next week when we play Utah for our first game, is that we'll monitor that stuff. We'll make sure that, Monday is a challenging day and make sure they get back at it. But then we still know, and you mentioned this, we still know we're not in game shape. And the only way to get in game shape is to play games. And
Right.
So we've upped in the past 2 weeks, we've upped our scrimmage time more. We've upped our conditioning time a little bit more, but more of those full field drills, high pressure, right and clearing, stuff like that help us as best we can get ready for game day.
Does being a mile high in altitude help you against opponents in the follow-up? Does it change the way you've coached in terms of the kids, especially the kids from Florida, kids that don't come from altitude? Or is it not, doesn't matter at this point?
Well, it's interesting, Greg. It always takes, when you first move out here. So let's say a young man comes from Florida, his first 2 weeks is acclimation time. And the key to that is to make sure that if you're getting some headaches or you're feeling really tired, that simply enough, just drink a lot of water. And then by 2 weeks, they're pretty acclimated. We've watched our opponents go through things over the 13 years, and it's kind of been funny is that we've seen them bring oxygen tanks. We've seen them go train down at Air Force Academy the day before the game because it's another 1,000 feet higher. We've seen them, take shorter runs. We've seen them, do all sorts of things. And now I think we've all been around long enough to know the best thing. If you watch pro football, pro basketball, what they do is they get in and they get out. So they'll come, so the advantage really becomes, interestingly enough, whichever in the head of our opponent when they come here, and then whichever in the head of our players when we go there, when we go out east, because we are breathing thinner air. There's no doubt about it. And so when you do get out east, you do have a little bit more in the tank.
I jokingly told some coaches here in Michigan that when my son was at Denver as a ski racer, that I bought a hyperbaric chamber so he could get acclimated to go out west. And I was just beer conversation on a Friday night. And then about a year later, somebody actually asked me if they could borrow it because they had a kid going out for a tournament and out for an event. I had to kind of say I was sort of full of crap that night, but it was one of those things. Now let me back up from a coaching standpoint. You have a pretty good understanding after fall ball what you're going to do. When you sit down with your coaches, talk about the schematics of what you do. I'm assuming you set up, practice plans for every day, but before you hit that field the first time in 2022, you've done your homework with all of the stuff that you want to accomplish. So talk a little bit about the coach's preparation, because I'm a young coach and I don't have any idea where to start. Where would you start?
Yeah, well, what we start with is, again, and having been around a while, this is my 41st year of college coaching. You've got a lot of background information. So first of all, I have what I call my blueprint of lacrosse, which basically lists, 75 to 100 things that could happen in a lacrosse game, and then I group them. It might be the face-off group, the extra man group, the settled offense group, the settled defense group, the transition offense group, the transition defense group, the things that happen on ground balls. And take, maybe there's 10, 12, 15 of those things, ends of games and stuff. And then you have little subtopics for that. And then you look at this thing and you say, there's no way. I just can't do this. I'm a high school coach. I play 2 games a week. I get a 2-week preseason, and bang, we're into our season.
Right.
So what I would recommend there is just do that. Just go through 1 game film and look at the different situations that happen and make sure that you've got something, because as much as we'd all like, and we hear all this, stuff about free play and, how great it is for kids and all that stuff. And it is. There's nothing wrong with kids going out and just playing 3-on-3 and pick up and, all the fancy names for beach lacrosse and all that stuff. But the bottom line is, number one, I think coaches have a great impact on their teams. And number 2 is, as much fun as it is when kids just get together and have fun. And we used to do it when I was a kid. You play, touch football on the street, you play pickup basketball, and you play all sorts of things. You still need something or some plan or someone to guide you. And so with that in mind, if they have at least a preparation for every situation, or as many situations as they can, what am I going to do? I kind of chuckle when I see even basketball coaches who, have been around a long time. They get to that 15 seconds left in the game and they're writing out a new play for their guys. Well, no, you better have a winner, and you better have worked on it and have a plan in place. So basically, that's the first part. And then the second, what we do here at Denver is we map out a month. We'll start with January because it's our preseason. We started on the 10th. We're going to finish January on the 29th with a scrimmage with the Great Hopkins team. And we set up a 3-week progression on where do we want to get in each situation, whether it be individual work, team drill work, half field, full field, as I said, the face-off game, man up, man down, all those kind of things, at least get us to a point by this coming Saturday to have an idea of what we want to look like. And then you break it down even further to each day. And what you do is you take that monthly or weekly schedule, you look at what you wanted to do on Monday. Okay, today's Monday. It's our week before our scrimmage. What did we have written down that we wanted to do today? We must have 300 drills. Matt Brown, my associate head coach, is a master of making up drills on the fly. And then we go to some of those drills and we put them in. We go to some of the individual work. It might be one-on-ones or just footwork or just shooting or things like that. We go to half field drills, 4-on-4s, 5-on-4s, and then we put it into half field. And then we do some full field every day and some man up, man out, man down every day. And then if warranted, some conditioning. And so you can see, you start with this massive big picture, the blueprint. You narrow it down to a month or maybe a high school coach's, whatever the preseason is. And then you go day by day. I've been amazed by some of my best friends who are much smarter than I. I've seen them be walking out on the field and writing out a practice plan. I could no more do that than the man in the moon. I I have to have it minute by minute. That could be from my football background or whatever. But when that 15 minutes is over for that drill, bang, the horn goes off and we are done. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we're moving on to the next thing.
Okay, that was a second question. How much flexibility within the practice time? You obviously, as an old football coach, you're not going to hit your head against the wall if the drill's not working well. You'll come back to it. I get that from the comment, but is there a time when maybe you go an extra 2 or 3 minutes in a drill because you want to make sure you see something?
Sure, I think you go an extra couple of minutes. What I think I've learned is, and this is where that differentiation comes in, is the old saying, never beat a dead horse and never beat one that's 20 lengths in front, right? And what I mean by that is, if it's going really bad, don't think you're going to change it by going 3 extra minutes, right?
Right.
And if it's going really good, you might even be better off cutting it short, because the mentality of young people is that it's going to last with them into the next thing. If you don't, if it's had gone bad and you explain to them, okay, it's gone bad, but we're at a new threshold. We're moving into half field now. Let's pick it up. Or if it's going good, hey, you guys did a great job with that. Now let's carry that on to the next thing. It's those ones where maybe it started bad, but then it's starting to get better, but you're just not quite there yet. Yeah, of course, go those extra 2 or 3 minutes.
All your practices are on the clock?
Every minute of every practice. Yep.
So everybody knows that they're running when they get down to 8 seconds, they're headed to the next drill.
Yeah, it's on the scoreboard, and as soon as that goes off, the buzzer goes off. We blow the whistle. It might be something where we call it switching ends or flip flopping. You might have right now we're trying to play everybody in mixed groups together. Now this week that'll change. We'll start moving towards our first team and our second team. So we might have our first offense against our second defense and our first defense against our second offense. Then when that buzzer goes off, they flip flop and we try to keep on moving. Now, believe me, I'm not perfect, and it's not like football where you have 12 assistant coaches. There's just the 4 of us out there. So with 50 some odd guys, it can, you might have to yell to them to get moving a little bit. We always so much more hyper aware of being hydrated. So after almost every drill, it's, hey, go get water if you need it. They each have their own water bottle, and that takes a minute or two, and then bang, hustle to your next spot.
When a young man asks me if he can go to the bathroom, I tell him I have no idea because I'm not a urologist. My question to you is, do you have bathroom breaks within your practice, or is it you just go when you go?
Yeah, I just believe that, look, these are young men. They got to go. And one of the things we've learned over the years and it's a little off the mark of what you're talking about, but I think it goes hand in hand with this, is the academic journey of young people. Sometimes we practice in the afternoons here. And so you might have a young man who's pre-med or triple engineering major, and he comes up to you and says, Coach, I'm sorry, but on Tuesdays, I have a lab. We start practice at 3:30. I have a lab until 10:04. Do you want me to drop that lab? And no. You come late for that lab because, right, God forbid, what are you going to miss? 1 of 5 days. The high school guys are playing 2-3 games a week, but for us, we've gotten so football minded. We've gotten so paranoid that we basically usually only play 1 game a week. So God forbid that this triple engineering major or a guy who's going to be a brain surgeon misses stick work on Tuesdays. No, you just come a little late, you make sure you're stretched, and we move on.
I asked that question not because of the stupidity of whether a kid can go to the bathroom, but we have young coaches that actually have asked that question. They don't know what to do. And that's so if you're letting, at the highest levels, if obviously we know people aren't making fortunes as PLL players. So this isn't exactly $1 million basketball and football. So I appreciate the levity of making sense of it from that standpoint.
Well, and when you become 70 years old, believe me, I got to run off the field once in a while. I'm 67, so I'm not far behind. I think we've had that conversation. Quick question. And if you got 44 dressed today, you're probably looking at
for Saturday, you're probably looking at 30, 32 kids maybe to play, which now
No,
makes,
this Saturday, everybody will play.
okay.
You know, I haven't spoken with Coach Milliman about how we're going to run it. But you know, these are scrimmages. Kids are
Okay.
competing. You know, again, you have your first guys and you have your tail end of the roster guys. This scrimmage this week is so meaningful to the middle guys. You
Right.
can play your first guys for a quarter or so, maybe a half, and get them out. They're still going to be your first guys. You know, you can wait until the end to get your last guys in, but they need a little love too. They've worked their tail off all year long. And we speak more about our scout team than we do about our first string guys, because we always want them to know the impact they're having on our team. So the work that they do all week in competing against the first string guys is so important. And even at the end of the game, you know, we might win a good game. First thing I talk about is the effort that the backup guys put in that week. But it's during a scrimmage time, it's those middle guys. Now, a week from now, when we come to our first game, you know, we think we play a lot of guys. Yeah, I think it's somewhere in a normal game between 24 and 32. If you're in a highly competitive game, it's going to be a little less. If you're in a mid-range game, it's going to be into that 24 to 32. And if either really fortunately or really unfortunately, you are in a blowout, then you play everybody as best you can.
My question to you is that I'm the 39th guy, and it's the week before Utah. It may maybe be the week before scrimmage. I understand you have a slightly different approach to the premise. But my question to you is, how does the 39th guy get your attention in practice if he wants to get game time?
Thing we do is we meet with our kids individually, and the first thing I tell them is, look, I was you. And back then when I was playing in college, I didn't understand why I was, you know, a backup player, but Coach Emmer and Coach Winters back there in my Cortland days, one time I remember Coach Winters explaining to me after I didn't get into our Cornell game as a senior, and I was upset about it, that I know you don't want to hear this, but this is going to make you a better coach. And he was absolutely right. And so number one, I want them to understand that I know how they feel. Number two is, and we talk about this all the time, is, look, athletics are not fair. If you're just getting in them to be a first team All-American, I'm sorry, we're only going to have one or two of those on our team, so we can't play, you know? So I think that to get them to understand, and the key thing is, how do I move up the ladder? Even if they're acceptable to, all right, I get it. There's 30 guys in front of me. I'm working hard. I'm trying hard. I'm only a freshman. How do I get there is the key question. I think that's what you're asking here is don't try to make big plays. That's the biggest mistake that's made by people that are at the kind of the tail end of the pack, is they think that we're smart enough to remember. And I tell this all the time, if we were smart men, we'd be more than just lacrosse coaches, right? So we would be doctors and all that other stuff. So we're not going to remember some big play that they're going to think, oh my God, that was awesome. I stuck one in the corner in some 3-on-3 drill. We're not going to remember that. What we are going to remember, we talk about after each practice, is, wow, John Jones had a good day today. Next day comes, wow, John Jones had another good day today. Next day comes, wow, John Jones is putting together a hell of a week. We got to think about moving him up the ladder, and just having a great attitude and continue to be as consistent as they can. As we say, don't prove to us that you can play in practice, because we think we have a pretty good team. If you can score against our defense, it means you can score against a lot of teams' defenses. If you can defend against our offense, it means you can defend or stop shots against other teams' offenses and shooters. So it's just for those guys, it's more of a long journey than for the first string guys who can have a bad day, but you know you're gonna go out there and you're gonna live and die with those guys.
Last couple of questions. Knowing the mental understanding and the capacity of your team, are they athletic? Do they bounce back? Are they competitors? I think young coaches sometimes concentrate so much on the X's and O's, they don't recognize the culture and the humanism of what their process is. I'm guessing in your coaching meetings every day, you have those discussions about the kinds of players that you have. You know, the kid who's got a great IQ, but maybe is a half a step slower, the kid who's athletic, who can't find his ass with two hands and a flashlight. And I think you have those discussions. And how important is that as a coaching staff for you guys to have those discussions?
Yeah. So first of all, we do go through that, and we try our best to recruit, the kind of people that are going to fit into our system. But first and foremost, I remember, and I don't remember saying it, but Matt Brown reminds me that I said it 13 years ago when I hired him to be my offensive coordinator. The first thing I said to Matt was, you win with people, not with players. And what I meant by that is, look, we all have to have certain level players, right? And we all recruit what we think are good players. The bottom line is, do they buy in? Because as we've seen, and you watch it in pro basketball, you watch it in pro football, one bad apple can screw a whole culture up, whether it's on the field, whether it's on Saturday night, whether it's not going to class, whatever it might be. One person out of that doesn't buy into the culture can screw things up. And the other thing is that most people are followers, right? If you took 100% of people, probably somewhere between 5 and 10% are great leaders, but are negative leaders. They're going to lead the wrong way. Then you get at the top end, probably 20 to 25% are good leaders. They're going to lead the right way. Well, that leaves you somewhere between 50 and 75% followers. And what those followers will do is they will follow either way. So if you eliminate the bottom end, when I first took the job here, one of the first things I had to do was throw 4 guys off the team. And that was from their past history. And so when we did that, it wasn't so much that we didn't have good leaders. We had some great young men here, but we had a lot of followers. And so all of a sudden they're looking in this direction. Where did those guys go? Okay, I'll go in this direction. I'll follow them. So, and that carries on in practice, that carries on in culture, that carries on in being excited about playing games, showing up early to practice, staying late. All of that stuff goes hand in hand. And then, as you said, then we throw in the X's and O's. And I got Matt Brown, who I believe is the best offensive coordinator in the game. Now you take that culture, that energy, that positiveness, and you throw a little X and O at them. Now you got something pretty special.
Last question, Coach. You're 70. You're nearing the end, as we all are, in the senior citizen age in the fourth quarter. Do you enjoy it more now, and do you recognize it that there should be more recognition and more enjoyment now than you did even 10 years ago?
What I think for me, Greg, it's been yes, absolutely. I'm appreciative of those opportunities. But what I've always said is that if I'm not excited the first day when the freshmen show up, and I'm not excited that first opening game, then I'll get out. And to this point, as I said, my 41st year in college coaching, my 49th year in coaching lacrosse at the high school and college level, I still feel that. And so, I've been blessed for some reason, knock on wood, I've been in pretty good health and especially since being out here. And, I've got people around me who support me. My wife supports me. She was willing to move 4 times to follow this journey that we've been on with our, we had 4 kids in 5 years, and she raised them as I dealt with other people's kids, and I've got amazing assistant coaches, Matt Brown here and Dave Metzbauer for 22 years at Princeton, and my son Trevor and John Orson and John Gallant, and all the guys I've had behind me that have put up with my crap and allowed us to do what we do together. One thing I have learned is I've learned to not sweat the small stuff. So when you got a young assistant coach who says, I got this great drill, and you've been doing one for 40 years that works, you step back and let him do his great drill. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters is the energy they put into his success and his feeling that he's having some say in the business. So, yeah, when I've been asked a lot, I think, and I talk about this in another interview. My friendly peers out there are telling recruits that I'm out, but we'll see. We'll see. And I do know that the day I do walk out of this place, it'll be the last place I go, and it'll be left in the hands of Matt Brown, who I think is the best coach in the country.
I don't disagree with you. It's a long way from Levittown, to say the least.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time. I think the coaches will get a lot out of this, and I can't tell you how much I've appreciated it. One other thing I want to mention, if you get a chance to watch your interview with us earlier, about a year ago, at the end of that, you explain a story about spaghetti as it relates to scouting. And if you ever get a chance to watch, if you're watching this interview, go back and watch Coach's interview and his story about spaghetti, and you'll find out that even the great ones sometimes aren't always sure of their footing.
Oh, it's amazing. And what's funny is these young coaches, they've come up with, number one, they've come up with terms so that guys like me don't understand what they're talking about.
Right.
And number two is they think they've invented everything. And so what I always tell them is, look, if you think you have a good idea, it was a great idea 30 years ago. And if you think you got a bad idea, hold on to it. It'll be a great idea 30 years from now.
Bill, thank you.
All right, Greg, I appreciate you. And again, apologize for last night.
I wanted to thank Bill Tierney from Denver and certainly Kevin Corrigan from South Bend for joining us. The message is, I think, pay attention to what you do and be a little flexible in the approach and how you pull it off. Thanks to both those gentlemen. Hopefully we'll see you next week for both John Torpy and Lars Tiffany on Saturday night. Lars, obviously, with Virginia, and John Torpy with High Point. They will bring another town hall to us next week, and stay tuned. And for those guys in the back, I'm your host, Greg Norman. Thanks for watching.